falling over, baby. Yeah, look at him. Good evening, everybody. Let's raise it tonight. Let's have some fun. Have some fun. 40 years ago, everybody, alcoholics were separated from society like lepers. A lot of times they were jailed like common criminals and committed to sanitariums like deviants. Today, alcoholism is regarded as a disease, not as a criminal behavior. But we've got a guest tonight who refutes this despite scientific evidence. But first, my friends, Females for Felons and Dr. Ralph Sturgis. I don't know how many of you had an opportunity to watch our Prisoner's Rights show, but I was informed today by one of my producers that Dr. Ralph Sturgis felt that I had not given their side, especially their young ladies, a fair shake here, pardon the expression, to give them an opportunity, all right, give them an opportunity to say why they were getting involved in, frankly, entertaining felons outside of the prison confines and having sex with them. I don't know who this young lady's name is. What is your name?
Charlene Taylor.
Hi, Charlene. How are you?
Charlene.
Charlene, Females for Felons. You're a beautiful young lady. You can't tell me that in this day and age of AIDS and everything, you would go into a prison or into a motel, and I understand Dr. Sturgis said it's run like a church social, and get involved hitting, and I don't know what church he goes to, but I'm going. Right? Don't you feel like a common, ordinary slut? Let's see if she has an
I'm glad I had an opportunity to come here tonight.
Let her say, let her talk. Please.
Last week, you maligned these women that were here last week, that they were sluts and whores and prostitutes.
Yeah, I did the same thing to you.
Yeah. I studied 6 years. I have an MS in social work.
You have an MS in social work, so this is your way of paying back society by hitting the sack with a bunch of prisoners?
Now, you just made a reference, entertainment. This is rehabilitation, not entertainment.
What you do is rehabilitation.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
You're rehabilitating their libidos.
I'm rehabilitating them for society. Do you want them to come out and rape people when they get out of prison?
They're certainly not going to stop raping people because they had a little piece from you.
You don't think so?
How many prisoners, just a second, doctor, how many prisoners so far have you entertained or rehabilitated?
I would say I've had hands-on opportunity for about 25 of them.
Dr. Sturgis, this man, stay away, mother, down, you sit down, you stay away, punk, you stay away. I'll tell you something. Stop it. This man is a phony. He's not Dr. Ralph Sturgis. He's wanted by the police. He is a phony who tried to phony us up on this show. She's a phony. You're a phony. You're a phony. You're a phony. I'll tell you what this is. We got a bill. We got a bill from Dr. Ralph Sturgis. We got a bill from Dr. Policeman my butt. All right? Very enjoyable show, I think. We fed the girls and guards. Guards, for Christ's sake, they couldn't guard a dog. All right? Girls didn't stay over because of confusion. I'm enclosing a dinner check for $200. Please make it out to me personally. Thanks, Ralph Sturgis. Give me the check. Give me the check for this phony. Give it to me. Here it is to Dr. Ralph Sturgis from BS Savings. $200. It's signed by me. Get lost, you phony, and here's a book for you. Get out of here. Out. Gone. Gone. Get lost. Get lost. Go to another segment. Get this guy out of here. We want to get going with this show. We don't need any more phony crap. I'm Dr. Moore. Stand by. This is a really important issue, all right? I came out before the show started kidding around. Let me tell you something. My mom died as an alcoholic. I have members of my family who were alcoholics, immediate family. I didn't have my first drink until I was well into my adult years. Simple reason being, I was afraid I, too, could become an alcoholic. I limit myself now to 2 drinks a night when I get off this show. And that's all I need. All right? But seriously, I think it would be very possible for me to become an alcoholic. And probably a hell of a lot of us in the audience, all right? Some of the facts that we should know. Through the 1940s, alcoholics were often jailed as criminals, all right? That's from the New York Times, October 25th. Violent behavior attributed to alcohol abuse. Get this now. It accounts for about 65% of murders, 35% of rapes, 30% of suicides, and 60% of child abuse cases. That's not a funny matter. We have a gentleman at the loudmouth, Mr. Tom Perrin, who, Tom, I'd like you to, you're a 4th-generation alcoholic, is that so?
That's correct, Mark.
And would you tell the story to our audience at home and here in the studio with us?
Sure. I got sober when I was 32 years old. I started drinking when I was 1 year old.
First started drinking at what age?
1 year.
Your parents started drinking?
That's a story in the family.
Okay.
Right. That when at Christmas time, when they disappeared to answer all the telephone calls, I sipped their martinis and got drunk. But most of the drinks I started when I was 17 years old, about the age, I guess, of most of the people here. I drank alcoholically from the time I started at 17 until I was 32 when I stopped.
32 years old when you stopped drinking. All right, you're a 4th-generation alcoholic. Mm-hmm. Are you sure that your disease, as you call it, or as a lot of people call it, a lot of medical experts call it, isn't really a behavioral pattern which is one of weakness, one of self-indulgence, one of just being a lazy, slovenly person who wants to get away from the realities of the world?
As a 1 year old, I was certainly self-indulgent, but not weak.
But you didn't go take this alcohol at 1 year old, Tom, by yourself. I mean, someone had to give it to you.
No, I took it.
You took it?
I took it.
From where?
I always did. Every time I saw alcohol, I took it.
Did you know it was alcohol?
Not when I was 1 year old. 1 year old, I don't even remember it. But certainly when I was 12 and 13
you don't
and 14
remember,
and 15.
but you remember that you took it.
No, I was told this.
I see. Was your mother an alcoholic, your father?
My mother's a pharmaceutical junkie and an alcoholic, and my father's an alcoholic.
That's a horrible story.
Not really.
That's a terrible
I don't call it horrible.
You have a 20-month-old son. Is he drinking?
Not yet. I think he's an alcoholic.
You tell him that?
I think he's too young to understand, but we're very careful.
Aren't you afraid that is going to label him immediately as being an alcoholic? He's going to grow up with that instinct. I'm an alcoholic. My dad said I was. My mom said I was. And consequently, he's labeled for the rest of his life?
I don't want him to be labeled, and certainly that's a concern of mine. I think one of the things we have to watch out about is labeling children of alcoholics or alcoholics in any way. But I am concerned. We're very careful. We keep and she likes to joke and play and laugh and tease, all the nice things. So
Is that something that's missing from the rest of your family, Tom?
Certainly was. My family was very violent. It was homicidal.
Did they kill anyone?
On the other hand, it was very intellectual, and whenever alcohol wasn't around, they were very loving.
Did they ever kill anyone?
No.
Then how do you know they were homicidal?
Because they tried.
They did try to kill someone. Members of their own family?
Members of our own family. We had a lot of guns around.
On our... Hey, what?
Pardon me? No.
On our stage with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Stanton Peele. He's the author of The Meaning of Addiction. Mr. Peele, your feeling about alcoholism?
Oh God, it's a terrible thing, isn't it? I really hate to hear stories about people who messed up their lives through drinking. And I'm really happy to hear your story, where even though you had a background, a family background of alcoholism, that you were able to wait until a time or to organize your life so that even though you did drink, it never got the better of you, and you feel to control yourself and have one or two drinks. I think that's really a great solution that people are able to come up with. It's kind of remarkable how people are able to do that, even though in their backgrounds they've really never seen anybody drink moderately. They're able to pull the strands of their lives together to do that. It's a remarkable story you have.
Well, I'm able to do it only because my mother, who died from it, all right, scared the hell out of me. I didn't want to I had read all the stories about the genetic similarities and the things that were, and let's face it, there are stories, many stories of twins being adopted out. And an alcoholic gets one and a non-alcoholic gets the other. And
Will you be interested to know, I wrote a review article for the Journal of Studies of Alcohol, which is the most prestigious of those journals, and the data is more complicated than people think. For example, in England they took identical twins and fraternal twins, and they found that the concordance of alcoholism was no greater for the identical twins than it was for the fraternal twins. This is the most important thing I want to make, though, about genetic inheritance of alcoholism. And here I'm going to quote George Vaillant. George Vaillant's a psychiatrist. Stanley Whitlow, I'm sure, can also tell you about George Vaillant. He's a psychiatrist at Dartmouth University. He wrote a book called The Natural History of Alcoholism. Although he is a physician and believes in the medical approach to alcoholism, he said something that's really crucial. It takes years and decades for people to develop the full-blown characteristics of an alcoholic. And he said something that's very similar to what you said. People who have a background of alcoholism should be doubly warned to be careful about guarding the way that they drink. Your description is very much in keeping with the way that he describes things. Let me just say one other thing that George Vaillant said. This was in an interview in Time magazine.
Yeah.
I always thought this was very interesting. The high number of children of alcoholics who become addicted, Vaillant believes, is due less to biological factors than to poor role models. He says, I think it would be as unlikely to find a biochemical source for alcoholism as to find one for basketball playing.
My father, all right, raised my kids, my family. My mother was an alcoholic. We were separated from my mother when most of my brothers were younger, and I was only 7 years old. We were raised in a totally non-drinking family.
Are you Irish,
and yet,
by the way?
Am I Irish? Yeah, that has nothing to do with
it. Well, George Vaillant found that Irish Americans are 7 times as likely to be alcoholics as Italian Americans. Do you have any explanation for that?
No, I have no explanation for that. That's probably the only reason.
Now, one thing that George Vaillant points out is that Irish Americans and other groups with high alcoholism also have higher
alcoholism.
Well,
you Irishmen out there are going to be happy about this, right?
So we're
going to be back with Stanton in just a second. Stanton Peele. We're going to take a break for a minute. We'll discuss alcoholism further. Is it a disease or not? I want you folks in the audience to really give some thought to exactly what these gentlemen are going to be discussing tonight, because I think it's imperative that by the time we leave this show, we make the determination, is it disease or is it just plain good old-fashioned weakness? Next on the Morton Downey Juniors.
I'm 2 years away from a beautiful day after night on the town. Just 2 years away from a beautiful day if I can just keep on down.
Everybody, welcome back. Listen, I see an argument getting started here over whether alcohol is nothing more than a behavioral weakness or if indeed it is a disease. And if it's a behavioral weakness,
Is smoking a disease, Mr. Downey?
Pardon me?
Is smoking a disease?
Let me run the show my way, then I'll let you get in there. If it is indeed a weakness, all right, the American public is being ripped off for billions of bucks every year with these rehabilitation centers, with insurance and everything else. We've got with us at the Loudmouth right now, and we're going to come back to Mr. Peel in just a minute. Dr. Stanley Gitlow. Now, Dr. Gitlow is with the Mount Sinai Hospital School, and he's treated addictive cases for 35 years. Doctor, disease or weakness? Disease.
No question.
Unequivocally.
Unequivocally.
Why?
If you look at what a disease is,
Is it a defect or a disease?
no, a disease.
All right.
Disease is a dysfunction with characteristic form. That's all it means. That's the definition of disease. And this one satisfies that definition perfectly well. I'd have no argument with Stanton if we were talking only about issues such as is it genetic and or behavioral, because I think it's probably both. It's probably multifactorial. It's a number of different causes to it. And there are a lot of diseases like that. This is just one of them. But it is a disease nonetheless.
Dan, why do you disagree with him?
Well, let's talk about something you mentioned, the treatment of it. George Valiant, who's a psychiatrist who treats alcoholics, was asked, what about expensive hospital treatment centers? Now so fashionable, they have become a growth industry. Valiant concludes flatly they do not work in the long run. You know why he concluded that?
Why?
He's a doctor. He treated 100 alcoholics, and he said, I'm really doing a great job with them. I've really got to check this out and to show everybody how great it is. He compared them to other alcoholics who didn't receive treatment, and shockingly, he found that the alcoholics he treated did no better than alcoholics that received no treatment.
That is only partially true, unfortunately. Later on, he did a longer follow-up. And when he completed the follow-up, what he did find was that if you gave appropriate treatment, then you did get a response. And the appropriate treatment was caring personnel, AA, self-help groups, support systems that would help people to recover.
Let me just read what he said in his book.
I thought you needed an operation or medication or something to take care of a disease.
No, not actually. If you break your leg and need a cast, is it a disease?
Is a broken leg a disease? No.
It's not?
An injury. What's a disease?
That to a medical person is a disease. See, the only thing that disease says is that it entitles people to special care. You have a whole group of people in society, and only 3 of them have a head cold. Then you give them special care. You give
Then
them...
I'm entitled to special care because of my over-smoking.
To a degree, yes.
Why only to a degree to me? I mean, this is habit forming.
No, I have no argument with that. As far as I'm concerned, you're behaviorally, according to Stanton, doing something that is very likely to cause you either emphysema or carcinoma of the lung or something like that. In the long run, most of us pick the way we're going to die. If you sit and practice medicine for 30 or 40 years, you find out we usually pick what will kill us.
Doing something wrong to ourselves.
One way or another. Now, are these illnesses, if there's a dysfunction, and if it is typical and can be characterized, that's a disease. By definition, that's a disease.
Is that standard medical community definition for disease?
As far as I'm
Has it
concerned,
always,
yes.
as far as you're concerned, has it always been?
Disease comes from Old French. Dis-ease. That's all it is.
Uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if you want to see somebody uncomfortable, see an alcoholic.
Can we
You're going to see
Dan,
somebody
go ahead,
plenty
Dan.
Can we ask Mr. Downey, can we ask how many people in the audience to quit smoking, please? How many of you people have used treatment to quit smoking? None of the people who quit smoking is so. Now, the American Society of Cancer Society claims that 30 million Americans have quit smoking, and then 95% of them have done it on their own. But only 5% have done it through treatment. How the hell did 95%? And you said earlier that, and a lot of people would agree with you, that smoking is the hardest addiction to quit.
How many
How the
people
hell
in
did
this
they do
audience?
it?
How many of these people in this audience drink? How many of you raise your hands feel that you're an alcoholic? Okay, so we've got 4 who figure that they're alcoholics. How many of you could quit if you wanted to? Now, the rest of you didn't raise your hands. Obviously, you're alcoholics if you can't quit if you wanted to. Doctor?
Martin, the fact that someone may behaviorally change or respond to behavioral circumstances
or
That
quit.
doesn't mean or quit. That doesn't mean that something is a disease. Or
Well, it's a little bit different than how we usually think of diseases, there, Stanley. At least maybe it's only I'm not a physician. Stanley is. I'm a psychologist. But usually when you have a disease like cancer or tuberculosis, you expect it to go into hospital and they can do something for you to really improve your prognosis. Alcoholism and cigarette smoking are quite a bit different than that. Don't you agree?
No.
They seem to have a very large component
I wouldn't
about
buy that.
people's
I think
lives
it's a
and
disease.
choices.
No.
I think I have a friend in North Carolina, 35 years before he took his first drink. He was always told that he'd be an alcoholic if he drank because his mother and his grandmother had been alcoholics before him. At the age of 35 years old, after closing a business deal, someone gave him a glass of strawberry brandy.
You said something really interesting about this.
He didn't stop drinking for 8 years.
You said
Lost
that some
all
people
of
are
his
set
money.
up for alcohol. You asked if some people are set up for alcoholism by the way that they're predisposed. Let me tell you this craziest study this man did. Okay, Mort. I'll just throw it out here. A man named Alan Marlatt.
Don't be nervous. I'm not going to get angry.
Okay.
No.
Well, I saw you punch the last guy out, and I just, I don't want to offend you.
I'm an easygoing guy.
All right. Well, I want to discuss it serious. They took alcoholics, and they either gave them alcohol and told them it wasn't alcohol, or they gave them something that was highly flavored and wasn't alcoholic, and they told them it was alcohol. And guess which group drank more, Mort, in this study? The group that wasn't drinking alcohol but believed they were drinking alcohol. And these are drinking alcoholics. This is a
Doctor, I mean, he's quoting all of these facts, and I think they're bull.
The quotes are in part, I must admit, Stanton, the quotes are in part correct.
Doesn't
And
it
so
make you
even
nervous that
George
maybe you might be
Balan's
incorrect?
work is correct, except that he printed more stuff later than that. The material that appeared in the Green Journal changed a lot of those impressions. And George is a good worker, and I respect him. But the fact is that people like Griffith Edwards in England, what he did was he gave pure psychiatric management to a group of alcoholics, found they didn't get any better than the people who didn't get any treatment at all. So you give the wrong treatment, find that it doesn't work any better than giving no treatment, and then you say treatment doesn't work. That's not valid. That's not the way to look at it, because treatment does work for this field. And there's AA and self-help groups and all sorts of things that work very, very well for
Let me
these
mention
people.
Griffith Edwards. That's an interesting study. He took alcoholics into a hospital. They did receive AA. Valiant study, by the way, that he compared had mandatory AA attendance.
Is this his early treatment or is this his later treatment?
This is the Green Journal.
This is he had mandatory AA treatment in this thing. Now, Griffith Edwards did the same thing. He found that just as many people got better if you took them into one session, gave them an informational interaction, and said, drinking's bad for you. As many people got better from that as who went into the hospital, were committed to AA, at least initially, and who had an active follow-up program where they were seen regularly after they left treatment. So as a result of this, Robin Murray, Dean of the Institute of Psychiatry, says, there can be no doubt that British and American perspectives on alcoholism differ. This is a distinguished psychiatrist there, increasingly clear that most of the assumptions of the disease model are unjustified and act as a barrier to more intelligent and effective approach to the problem. British clinicians have shown that the effective treatment is marginal, and in contrast to their American counterparts, have decided against the major expansion of inpatient treatment. The whole country is going against treatment.
In England is.
Yes.
England's all
Why are they
screwed
so
up anyhow.
wrong?
They're all screwed up anyhow. Let me ask you a question.
In England, you have situations where the number of recovered are very, very low. The self-help groups are marginal at best. They've practically just begun. And here in this country, we're walking around with 1 million people in Alcoholics Anonymous who've recovered.
Tim, you're being so reasonable and conscientious. I really appreciate that. I want to just say that.
Would you like me to play some music so you can dance? Huh?
Can I help it? No other country has accepted AA.
No other country.
No other country in the world has accepted AA like we do. Because, there were AA groups in 19th century America. There was a group called the Washingtonians.
Thank God for AA. I think they're wonderful. I think
Other
they're
countries
wonderful.
can't bite into it as much. God bless
You're a
AA.
psychologist.
God bless AA. I want to
You're
get
a
up and testify for
psychologist,
AA,
right?
too.
You're a psychologist, right?
I am, yes, I am.
Okay, not a psycho, a psychologist. Right? Now, as a psychologist, you have a service to perform for humanity. Do you help alcoholics, people with behavioral problems?
I've helped all kinds of people, Morton.
Do you help alcoholics?
Alcoholics come to me. I can't take the risk of dealing with alcoholics. I honestly can't.
Why?
Because so many alcohol. Valiant reported that 95% of his alcoholics relapsed, and they all went to AA.
Are you afraid of failure?
Yes, I'm very much afraid. In the United States today,
You're an alcoholic. You're afraid of failure. You're afraid of failure. You could become an alcoholic overnight. I mean, doctor, you say 1 million recovering alcoholics. I would bet there's more than 1 million. I think there's about 20 million alcoholics in this country. I know right off the top of my head at least 20 recovering alcoholics. I'm sure you know 1,000.
The last figure that I'd heard was just that in the program.
Oh, in the program
That's
now.
right. Outside of the program, sure, there are many people who are recovering.
However, one thing that's interesting about alcohol abuse, Mort, is that these aren't full-blown alcoholics, but the most dominant period for alcohol abuse
Full-blown alcoholic. You're pregnant or you're not. You're an
all right, go
alcoholic.
call these guys all alcoholics. Most of the drinkers between the ages of 20 and 25 who have drinking problems outgrow those drinking problems without treatment. Something about growing up, getting a job, and having a family. Have you noticed that? That people tone down a lot as they get older?
No, I got
people
wilder.
quit drugs.
I got worse. I've gotten, and I'll bet they have too. I've gotten less patient with BS. I've gotten less patient with the lies that we're told by our government. I've gotten less patient with the bureaucracies and the people who can't succeed in life except on our backs. So I didn't get better as I got older.
How do you feel about people being given, one of the articles I cite here shows that people who were put into treatment programs on the basis of drunk driving arrests actually had more subsequent arrests than people who were given normal judicial
Doctor, I
prosecution.
can't believe these figures. Where the hell are they coming
Can I just
from?
read the summary of the study?
You got all kinds of figures. Stanley.
Did you just read the summary of the study?
This is a study in the Journal of Alcoholism. I'll tell you what, I'll read it when we come back and we'll meet some alcoholics and hear their stories, all right? Stand by. I'm Morton Downey Juniors.
The minds of the
We're going to take some of your calls from home in a little while, all right? Some of you have had interesting stories or experiences with alcohol. By all means, we want to talk to you. Stanton Peele is our guest on stage tonight, author of The Meaning of Addiction. Dr. Stanley Gitlow, you met. He'll be back with us again shortly. At one of our loudmouths, we have Dr. Joseph Beasley. Joe, I wonder if you'd get into a little discussion with our guest tonight.
Yes, Mr. Peele, I listened very carefully to what you had to say, but the only thing that I have credibility, I can believe you.
And I might add that he is the medical director of Brunswick House, all right? So he doesn't come lightly credentialed.
Is that the only thing I can believe of what you said is the fact that you do not treat alcoholics. I do every day. I treat people who are bleeding to death. I treat people who are dying of liver disease, people desperately, women pregnant, saying, please help me get off this. I don't want to kill my baby. I live this and breathe it.
I feel for those people just as you do.
Yeah,
But you don't do anything for them.
People,
You don't do anything for them because it's got a 95%
people that charge
failure
$18,000
rate.
to go to a psychiatric hospital don't do any more than leaving the people alone, according to the research.
Go ahead, doctor.
First, there is no question in the scientific community, except from you that I know of, that not only is alcoholism a disease, it's one of the major diseases in the world. In the United States, it is right up there with heart disease, stroke, and cancer. It accounts for from 25% to one-third of all admissions into general hospitals. Point two, children of patients with alcoholics, and there are children of alcoholics, and there are 26 million of them in the United States, one of 4 times greater risk of developing the disease, even if they're not raised in the presence of their parents. To follow your dictates could kill a lot of people, maim a lot of people, and maul a lot of people, and destroy a lot of people's lives.
All right, you're doing that. Ken. I mean, he's telling you.
All right,
He's
wait,
got
wait, wait,
No, there's one thing that I'm really confused about, and I wish you'd help me. I've never lost control of my drinking. I've never hit my children when I've drunk. There are people tell stories where they've drunk for 20 years
never
and
hit
run
mine
people
either.
over. And now
I know
all
a
of
lot
a
of
sudden,
people who
I'm
don't
on the
drink to hit their
defensive.
kids.
Somehow, in this world, in this crazy world we live in, I'm on the defensive now because I've never hurt anybody when they drunk. And when I say that I have to say something about drinking, people say, we don't want to listen to you. We got to listen to people that have killed people or killed themselves or gotten hurt drinking. Isn't there something backwards about that?
Because you're missing the main point. Alcoholism doesn't have anything to do with being good or bad, weak or dumb,
I didn't say good or
smart
bad,
or dumb, or moral or immoral. It has to do with being born susceptible to it, which some people are more, just like some people have blue eyes.
All right.
Can I ask you a question, sir?
Go ahead. You go ahead. And
Why
also,
are Irish
Stan,
Americans 7 times
Stan,
as
it
likely to be
also
alcoholics
seems to
as
me.
Italians, according to George
Oh,
Valle?
forget the Italians, the Irish, the German, all
That's
that
not
crap,
true?
all right?
Is that true or not?
It
Is that
seems
true?
to
Is that a
me.
true fact that Irish Americans are 7 times likely to be alcoholics as Italians? Is
There's
that true or not? Is that true or not?
yes, there's a perfect...
Why is it?
Let him answer.
The reason is there's a genetic distribution into racial susceptibility.
You mean Irish people are
80% of the
racially
Chinese
predisposed to be
can't drink at all.
alcoholics? He believes Irishmen are racially inferior alcoholics. You believe that?
He didn't say racially inferior. You said racially
They're
inferior.
racially predisposed to
You
be
said
alcoholics.
racially inferior, and I'm an Irishman. I'll show you how inferior I am. Now, let me just say something. Let me say something. You pointed out a very good point. You pointed one out also, Stanton. You said, when I get drunk, I don't beat my kids, don't murder, I don't do this, all right? But some people who get drunk beat their kids, murder, commit abuse. Doesn't that tell you that alcohol to them is a disease, has created a behavioral disease in them?
Should we excuse them because they're alcoholics for doing that, Morton?
We should treat them as though they're diseased.
Now what? So after they kill somebody, we should treat them, Morton?
After
If a
they,
man gets in the car, he's an alcoholic, and he kills an 18-year-old girl, should we treat him as they get the
he
disease?
should go to prison and be treated. So
Offenders,
when he comes out of prison in 20 years, he's well. All right?
offenders are driving while intoxicated.
Will you lay the damn papers down? Go ahead. Miss Kelly, doctor, has anyone ever told you look like Phil Donahue?
Mr.
Go ahead.
Peel, yes, the most devastating, ignorant, and injurious thing you have said is to give the impression that alcoholism is not treatable. It's not treatable if people like you consider it a moral problem. No, it's not treatable. It's not treatable.
I
if
consider
people-
murder a moral
Wait, let me
problem,
finish.
sir, not
You got
alcoholism.
15 minutes. I just want 5. It's not treatable if it's treated as a psychiatric problem. If it's treated as a medical disease with the same level of detail and exactness, the recovery rate is greater than almost any other disease.
What do we do to George Valiant for producing rates that are no better than just leaving people alone?
Get him a better sample and treat it medically, body, mind, and spirit, rather than an isolated fashion.
Let me tell you something. Damn right. Yes. There is a case. There is a case going before the Supreme Court. I pray to God we've got an intelligent Supreme Court. The Veterans Administration excludes alcoholism from illnesses and disabilities that allow vets more time to claim education benefits because the VA considers it willful misconduct. We're going to be back, talk about that. We'll reach some men who have gambled away millions of dollars, and they, too, blame it on disease. Next on the Morton Downey Show. Let me tell you, my friends, anyone who's had a drink is not an alkie, all right? There's a lot of people who can take one drink and they are alkies. In my opinion, it is a disease that has been reasonably demonstrated by Dr. Gidlow, Dr. Beasley. We have some, and Stan Peel, of course, disagrees with us. But he's written a book. He's going to make a lot of dough on that book because everyone's going to buy it and say, yeah, I want to get rid of that damn kid anyhow.
Disease books
Take him
are
out of
much
the house.
better.
The kid stinks. The kid's a
Disease
lust.
books
I
are
don't want
much
him,
better, Mr.
don't want him in the
Downey.
house. We got some
My
folks
books are
here. You,
popular.
sir,
It's hard to
will you please zip it for just a minute, all right? You, sir. Alcoholic, what is your problem?
I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic.
You're a drug addict. You're a drug addict and an alcoholic, all right? Folks, I'll be very honest with you. These people are members of programs that are trying to help them cure themselves. I don't want them embarrassed in their jobs. I don't want them embarrassed in their neighborhoods and their families. We've allowed them to wear these masks here. We know they're legitimate. Go ahead, tell us your story. Is it a disease or you're just a weakie?
Well, I definitely know it is a disease, and I spent 17 years trying to recover from it, and I never could get anywhere because they never treated it as a disease. I was punished. I was beaten. I was beaten. I was made fun of. I was always treated as if I had a behavior problem.
How's it being treated now?
As a disease, and I have been not used any mood-changing, mind-altering chemicals.
What are they doing to treat it as a disease? Are you getting head shrink help, or are you getting counseling? What's happening?
I go to counseling, and I go to self-help groups that have helped me in my recovery.
AA?
NA.
NA. Narcotics Anonymous.
Right.
Okay. Is it working? How long have you been off it?
A little over 4 years.
You crave it still?
No, I don't.
Go ahead. Respond. There's a man who's getting proper treatment.
Sir, congratulations. I'm really glad you're staying off the drug. I'm really proud of you. I wonder what your reaction is to this man who killed his daughter in New York, and they said he was consuming tremendous amounts of cocaine. Do you think that, how should we react to a man like that, do you think, sir?
Well, personally for myself,
Talking about Dr. Steinberg, the alleged killer of his daughter, right?
Yeah, I think he's an attorney, not a doctor.
He is also a doctor. He's a JD, so he uses the term doctor.
I'm sorry, go on.
as this disease progresses, I can see anybody doing anything. I can identify with anybody killing anybody because as the disease progresses, that's what makes it also a disease. It's
You think it
progressive.
makes sense almost in terms of his disease that he got to that point that he killed her. It's the natural consequence.
Doesn't mean he shouldn't be punished now,
Right.
Stan. You're not saying he shouldn't be punished.
I'm not saying that at all.
I think if he is guilty, this slime ball should be punished the same way his daughter was, all right? Sir.
Yes, my name is Ed McDonald. I'm also a recovering alcoholic.
Thanks, Ed.
I don't apologize for that. I don't feel I was responsible for my disease. I believe I'm responsible for my recovery. When I picked up my first drink at 14 years old, I got drunk. And I don't think I was really responsible for that. I don't think I ever picked up a social drink in my life. For me, it could be chemical. But in the self-help groups I'm involved in, we don't really care whether it's a disease or not. We feel it's sort of a spiritual intervention, and it's a gift that we're sober. Probably 1 out of 35 alcoholics will recover in this country.
Can I ask you a question? When people quit drinking, what do you think it's mainly due to? How do you understand when a person quits? What explains it?
All I can do is speak for myself. Mine was a spiritual intervention.
When people sort of get a kind of, would you say it's a moral kind of thing, or when you say
He
spiritual?
said it was a spiritual intervention. What the hell are you trying to do? Put words in his mouth?
It was a spiritual intervention. Something outside of myself led me to the rooms of
Well, I just want to say that in the many addictions that I've observed of all kinds, people have a value that's more important. When people decide to quit smoking because they say, look, my kid's going to start smoking if I don't do that, they have a value towards being healthy. They have a value towards not being... People have, and for many people, the value is a religious one. When it's something more important to a human being than to continuing to indulge in that addiction, then
Would
it's
you
amazing
say,
what
let me
kinds
ask
of
you,
recovery.
Mr. McDonald, you said a spiritual intervention, all right, a spiritual awakening. Would you say that in your case, as it is in many cases, when that spiritual awakening comes, it's almost like a miracle?
Yeah, you could call
Let
it
me tell you
spiritual
something,
surgery.
Stanton. Remember, miracles are possible. If you don't believe that, Lazarus was dead, and he came to life when God touched his spirit. His spirit was touched. Let me go to this gentleman here. Go ahead, sir. Alcoholic, drug, what was it?
My name is Marty D. I'm a compulsive gambler.
Compulsive gambler?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that a disease, too?
You better believe it is. And unless you've been in my shoes, you better not be so sure it's not.
How did it affect your life?
I know how I suffered.
How did it affect your life, Marty?
How it affected my life is I gambled for almost 30 years, and I became a lowlife and a liar and a thief, and I did a lot of things I'm ashamed of, but I had no control. It controlled me. And I'm proud to say for 13 and a half years I've been abstinent and getting Gamblers Anonymous. And how it's helped me is that people who've been where I've been have helped me to see myself and be honest with myself.
Well, I've always been interested in gambling as an addiction, and that's what I wrote a book called Love and Addiction, where I said if people become addicted to powerful experiences like relationships with other people or with gambling, is that also biological? Is that also inherited? It was confusing to me, and I still don't understand
It's not confusing to you. You're selling books, baby. You're making money. Let me ask you something. How did this affect your life in terms of how much money did you lose? All right. How much would you gamble the paycheck? Would you gamble the kids' food, the wife's skirt? You gamble any damn thing you could?
I have lost a year's salary in a day, but I have also gambled pennies with the same insanity, okay, and the same drive to have that action. It wasn't the amount of money. It was the action. Just like sticking a needle in a vein or taking a drink.
All right, let's think about this for just a second now. Give this some thought. If we identify, and I'm going to jump in on the side of Stanton here for just a second. If we identify alcoholism as a disease, I can accept that. If we identify drug addiction as a disease, albeit self-inflicted as alcoholism is in the beginning when you take the first drink, I can accept that. But if we start accepting gambling as a disease, what are we going to do with the insurance companies, all right? If all of the inadequacies of the human spirit are diagnosed as diseases, I mean, we are going to compulsive what?
Shopping they treat as an addiction now.
I have that. My wife does, too. We'll be back in just a second. I'm going to call her now.
Began a series of exclusive reports on how some fortune tellers swindle tri-state residents out of millions of dollars each year. As a result of reporter Joe Collins' undercover investigation, New Jersey State Senator Matthew Feldman has introduced a bill that could put corrupt fortune tellers behind bars. Our special series, Fortune Teller, Fortune Taker, demonstrates the importance of our ongoing commitment to investigative reporting on the news at 10.
Welcome back, everybody. In the few minutes that we have remaining, here's a horror story. You, sir.
Joseph A. I gambled for 32 years of my life. I just want to thank you for being so sensitive with our anonymity. It's real.
How much money did you gamble?
Well,
big bucks?
Big bucks.
How
Let's
much?
say I gambled over 7 figures.
Over seven
Seven
figures?
figures.
Are you broke today?
Well, I'm on my way to recovery.
You put your brain back to work and you're coming back
yes,
again?
I haven't made a bet in 5.5 years.
Good for you.
Good for you.
My name is Raymond Franklin. I've been to some of these self-help groups and everything, and I know that they work. And
you're an alcoholic?
No, I'm not an alcoholic.
You're a drug addict?
No.
How do you know they work? They haven't worked. You don't need any help, sir.
John, I'm a recovering
Sir,
drug addict.
give him a chance. Wait a second. I want this gentleman. Sir, cool it. We've only got a minute.
My name is John, and I'm a recovering drug addict.
Drug addict.
What drugs did to me, besides the physical and the monetary loss.
You still married?
Yes, I am.
Did it destroy your marriage almost?
Almost, yeah.
Did it destroy your kids almost?
He was too young.
Too young. All right. You're not too young anymore to continue your recovery. God bless you. Congratulations to you, doctor. Doctor.
There are probably 10 or 20 million people in this country that are suffering from these diseases.
Well, suffering compulsive gambling, they say there are 15 million gamblers.
Wait a second, Stanton, for goodness sake.
Suffering is enormous.
Suffering is enormous.
We're looking at
more
no question but that it can be treated. We're looking at gambling.
Is there any way of curing diarrhea of the mouth? Huh? To Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous, give them a cheer. They're doing a hell of a job. Doctor, Stanton, Dr. Beasley, our guests, all of you. Give them hell, gang. Tonight, tomorrow. Some of the most vicious criminals in our society are juveniles. And yet some people feel that juveniles should be exempt from the death penalty. If you ask me, that's the real crime. Burn them!
Reg Wells. In this business, you don't gain respect overnight. You put in the time. You work hard. Journalist is a title you earn. Wells, anchor, reporter. The news at 10.